Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today, we have with us a very special guest. Her name is Christine Lauer. She's a registered holistic nutritionist and registered acupuncturist from Ontario, Canada, and the owner of No Allergies Please. She is well known for helping people with allergies and sensitivities improve and reduce their symptoms using applied kinesiology, if I said that right, and a unique form of needle-free acupuncture which allows her to target the allergens specific to each of her clients. Christine enjoys coaching and empowering others. I am super excited to talk to her today because I'm going through this exact thing right now. And when we connected, I don't even know how it happened, but it was like a godsend. So, welcome, Christine.
Hello, and thanks for having me. It's so nice that we connected. We kind of hit it off right at this immediately. That's what I think.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit more about how you got into what you do.
Well, it all started when I had my daughter and she had eczema. At
Mm,
3 months old, she started having this, and all I got was change laundry detergent and, you know, wash your sheets and here, take this formula. And nothing helped. And she was like that for about a year. And then suddenly everything cleared up. And I was happy it was gone. I wasn't stressed anymore because I was literally, for the first year of her life, putting glove like socks on her fingers so she wouldn't scratch herself bloody.
mm,
I was doing like petroleum jelly on her face, arms, and legs. So she looked like a grease monkey because everything that I was supposed to do and told to do didn't help. So all I could do was create this barrier. And I thought, oh, she's going to be like this all her life, like to have all this and then the scar. And so it was quite stressful. And then it just magically disappeared. And I didn't know why. I thought, oh, you know, I had this fleeting thought in my head and I didn't think anything of it. Um, but down the road, I started to learn a little bit about natural health. Not a lot, just a little bit. And I decided to sit in on a class for nutrition. And they started talking about something called muscle testing, and they were demonstrating it. And I thought, this is so fascinating. And I literally did like a complete pivot. And it worked out really well timing wise because my daughter's eczema started to come back behind her legs. So I
mm.
started to learn all this stuff and I was able to incorporate that in, which was a godsend.
Absolutely. And I know eczema can be it, especially from a young age. My nephew had it, and it would just scar and scab, and his little elbows were always raw. And I just felt so bad for him. And same thing, the doctors were like, "Here, use this prescription cream," but it never did anything. They told him to swim in the ocean. I was like, okay, which
Right?
actually was
Yeah.
very helpful. I will say that. So
The
you
salt
got into the
water.
muscle testing, and I think I was talking about my daughter who went for, that was the first I had experienced muscle testing, and the nurse like stood there with one arm on her arm out straight and her hand on my daughter's shoulder, and then the doctor, her other hand on the doctor's shoulder. I think that's how it worked. Yeah. And he would put something on my daughter and then test the nurse's arm. And if the nurse's arm gave way, he would set it to one side. If the nurse's arm stayed stiff, he would set it to the other side. And then I'm like, okay. And I'm watching this whole thing like, this is crazy. What is going on? And come to find out, like, he was testing her for things like botulism and E. coli and mono and all this stuff he was putting on her, just on her tummy or chest or wherever. It was insane, and I was like, this is crazy. But literally, is he's telling me these words, I'm going, that makes sense. Ooh, that makes sense. And it was miraculous. But now you do, tell us about the needle free acupuncture.
So what it is I always explain to people, you need to think of acupuncture using a cold laser or a pen instead of needles, right? And this pen is literally connected in with my software to a computer. And what I do is let's say you had an issue with a dog or a cat, right? In terms of an allergy or sensitivity. I would literally take that information from my computer, send it through that laser light pen, and point it to acupuncture points. And what it's doing, it's taking the information that I call it a fingerprint, I call everything fingerprints, through the body, and then the body takes the information and it updates. So it's kind of like your body is its own computer, and there's programs running for everything, but the program for the dog or the cat isn't working. So you send in the right one. And you can do this for traditional acupuncture as well. But my focus is mainly on, like, the allergies and sensitivities and that sort of thing. So that's how that works, if that makes any sense.
It does. So I think and it works. It makes sense to me because I have a little machine, a tiny little machine that tests your sensitivity or your reaction to different essential oils by feeding into the frequency of each oil. And it's like your body can say, and so it'll spit out a little report. And it's not necessarily what your body needs, but the way it was explained to me is based on the frequencies and what your body reacted to, that would be most beneficial to your body right now because it's like the frequencies that it drew on. And
Yeah.
it is funny because I've talked to holistic practitioners who literally have this exact machine I have just for the oils. And every morning they put it on there and then they take whatever it is, the top 10, and either put those oils in a capsule or inhale them or diffuse them in their office because it's minute by minute. It could be different 20 minutes from now, but it's all frequency. And so it made more sense to me. And then after I watched my daughter, but so you use this on your daughter to help her eczema?
Yeah. So what I did is I identified through the muscle testing what substances were a problem for her. And I've learned over the years which ones tend to be the common culprits. And so you literally send through what the culprits are, and then that allows the body to now recognize it and to be able to process it and detoxify it from the body, whereas it couldn't before, right?
So
Um,
she's so let me get this straight. I'm gonna make sense. Make sure I'm wrapping my head around this because if I'm confused, I know somebody else out there is. So let's say you give her a test for dust mites.
yeah,
Okay, and then she reacts, or how would she react in the muscles? You do the muscle testing where like your arm would go down, or what? How do you?
yeah. So when you're doing the testing, her arm would go weak, or whatever area of the body you're testing with. So if the body weakens, then you know that that is a stressor to the body that's creating some kind of inflammation or some kind of response. And then you balance that out using the laser.
Okay, okay. So then you would send. It's almost like exposure therapy. So is that kind of like you're giving her a
It's
little bit
kind
of
of
it?
like that, but you're not actually exposed to the actual substance. You're exposed to the frequency of it.
Okay.
And that's what's going through.
Okay. Now explain for the people because like I said, I just talked about what I knew about frequencies as far as the my essential oil thing. Talk about a little bit about like the frequency of like a dust mite or something. A little bit more about frequencies so people can kind of understand what like a lot of people don't believe that we're all energy, that we all, and energy and frequencies is so fascinating.
So, this is how I typically explain it to people. I always say that everything that exists has its own unique fingerprint. And these fingerprints, when you break them down small enough, what are we made of, right? If I were to say we're made of 80% what would come to your mind?
Water,
Okay. And what is water made of? Like if there's an acronym for water,
H2O,
okay, what's the H
hydrogen,
and the O?
oxygen,
And what are they?
atoms.
and atoms are just energy,
Atoms are energy. Yeah.
right? And people think of, you know, our bones are made out of calcium, magnesium, you know, we've got sodium, potassium, all of those things. Those are minerals, but they're also atoms.
Mm,
So when you
yeah.
put all of that together, each of us forms a unique combination of these atoms, which gives us our fingerprint. And that's the same for everything that exists, whether it's an apple or a pear or ragweed, somebody's pet. Everything has its own fingerprint, and you're either going to recognize that or resonate with that, or you're not. And it's when you don't that when you that contributes to like the stressors and the inflammation and everything else that you get.
Okay. That makes more sense. So say I come to you and I say, okay, I don't even know what's wrong. Every time I eat, I sneeze. Where do you go with that?
Well, first I'd want to find out what is it that you're eating,
Hmm.
right? What are the common things, the top allergens or things like that? And then I would literally just test you for each one of those and see which ones your body is going, I don't really like these.
Hmm.
And then you balance them out with the acupuncture, with the laser. So once you balance it out, now the body recognizes that fingerprint, and that's no longer part of the issue.
Okay. I got you. I got you. So you're not really, you're just kind of giving the frequency simulating that exact thing. And your body is saying, okay, I can take this. Here it is. It's safe. I don't have to reject. Because I
Yeah,
feel like that's
yeah,
what allergies are. It's like trying to reject this thing from your body. Like, I don't
yeah,
like it. I don't want it. Got to get it out of here.
right. And it all comes down to, and this is because of my computer science background. That's why I keep telling people about computers, and we've got our programs, right? The programs aren't working. It's almost like the program's corrupt. It's got some virus in there, so we got to use the laser, put in the new program, do an update.
So how do you know, like, how do you, I mean, just curious, let's say, okay, so I'm just going to hypothetically take me, for instance, anytime I eat a preservative, which is usually ends in ATE or ITE, they're preservatives.
Yep.
How would you know what frequency to give me to test for that?
So I actually have little vials, little glass vials, and the frequencies are stored in there for each of the different substances.
Okay.
It's almost like a homeopathic solution, a water alcohol solution, and that's what's holding that fingerprint. So then I test directly with that. And other people have different software, like I have one too, where those things are all on there, and I can just send those through, and the body comes out with a report in terms of what's an issue.
Okay. And you can do this virtually or you have to be in the office?
You don't have to be in the office, but when you do it virtually, that's another thing that people have to wrap their heads around. All right. It's And the way I kind of explain that, like right now, you and I, we're connected, probably wirelessly. You're hours away, different time zone, and yet we're able to connect. It's the
Right.
same thing when you're on a cell phone or you have your internet and your router is in the basement, but you still have your connection and you're up on the top floor, right? We've established a connection. The signal is going through, so you work with that connection.
Right. And I've seen for the people out there listening that are going, okay, I don't believe this 1 second. I have a good friend that is a holistic, I don't even know what she is. I just tell her she's like the healer of all things. She's like my medicine healer person. I don't know what she does. But she literally across, I had a hip issue. My hip was killing me. And she took tuning forks and we're virtual. We're on Zoom. She's about 3 hours away. And she literally could go down and almost like she said, feel the energy. And she's like, okay, your fourth vertebrae, you're this. And she's having me like shift my hips and she's running this thing, this using these tuning forks. And again, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would be like, poo poo, not a thing. But I literally had zero hip pain for about 6 months. And she's like, oh no, I can tell where your energy is stuck. I can feel it. And so it's like there's science, there's intuition, there's all of this stuff, but it sounds like yours is more scientific.
Well, and the interesting thing is with acupuncture, medically, they've proved that it exists, but they just don't understand it. So, typically when you have a test and sometimes they have to give you an injection so that they can trace things through your body. Like they use like a radioactive, they call it an isotope. So they've injected that into acupuncture pathways in the body and they've been able to actually trace that through the pathway.
Right.
So they know it's there, but they don't have the understanding of the mechanisms in terms of how the acupuncture works in the modern medicine.
Right. Well, and it's to me it's just a divine thing. It's a miracle. I mean, our body is all of these maps and charts and I know I do the essential oils and I'll tell someone, well, they're like, "Oh, well, I have a kidney infection." Okay. And I take out my little book that has a little picture of the foot and I'm like, "This is where it's on the kidney, so you can rub it directly on your kidney up there or you can rub it on this place in your foot if you don't like the smell of it." And big pores in your feet, it goes to every cell in your body, but I feel like the frequency thing, it's like ibuprofen. If you take an ibuprofen, it knows where in your body needs to be healed. So it
Yeah.
goes to where it's needed.
And the cool thing too, even about the essential oils in acupuncture, there's a pathway for each organ, right? And there's
Hmm.
points for and going along each pathway. And certain ones are specific for certain functions, but you can take an essential oil and put it on specific acupuncture points, and then that gets drawn in to because it has a specific purpose. Um, so, for example, most people have heard the term yin and yang, right?
Hmm.
So, some people can have what's called a yang deficiency or a yin deficiency. So, there's actually acupuncture points in the body for that. And there are certain essential oils that can even balance out and work on and target those deficiencies.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've learned more about it, but the whole energy thing in general just absolutely fascinates me. I'm reading the Energy Code right now, and great book, and I'm
Yeah.
almost done. But I keep going back and starting at the beginning. Like I'm not quite getting it. I'm not, I just feel like I need to know it better. But absolutely fascinating. So what
Yeah.
was do you mind if I asked it, how did you figured out what all these things were? Is your daughter's eczema cleared up a little bit?
She's completely cleared up.
Mm,
She's 28 now. So that was going back many years.
wow. And very grateful, I'm assuming.
Yes. And then my husband also had seasonal allergies. So since he was a teenager, so those are all good. Those are all gone. So it's almost like they were my first clients. You know what I mean?
Right. No, absolutely. And then this is obviously not something that you can just go out and buy. You can't just go out and buy this little laser zapper. I mean, you need to be certified and know what you're doing. Or
Yeah.
is
You
it
have to know where you're putting the laser, what it's for, and how to use the substances, how to, muscle test and stuff like that. Yeah.
interesting? Interesting. So talk a little bit more for the people out there listening, because about the energy, the concept of the whole energy and like healing, and is that part of what you do too, or is that out of your
I do some additional healing from that aspect too. Emotions and everything else can also have its own frequency, its own fingerprint, right? Or if someone has something traumatic. So I had a girl years ago. She had an incident of some kind happen in public school to do with another student. She never told me what it was. But what I had done in that situation, she had gone to high school and she ended up moving schools, doing all kinds of therapy. And she went to high school and suddenly she saw that student again.
Mm.
and everything came back. So I actually had her think of whatever that situation was, get into that vibration of where she's at when she was experiencing that. And I used the laser to balance that out with corresponding emotions that I tested.
Mm.
And that
Okay.
balanced her out so that she, was able to go to school and not have to, you know, it's kind of like you have that memory, like you are bitten by a snake sort of thing. And thereafter you're afraid of snakes because it's been
Right.
that hardwired. So I helped her from that aspect. Um, there's so much more to it. It's really quite fun. I like seeing the look on people's faces. It's like, okay, you balanced me for this, and how is it that tomorrow yesterday I was able to eat this and I'm totally fine.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, but I'm sure like in the people that are listening to this podcast being the adult child of dysfunction, it is probably fascinating to them to see how the emotion thing or like you're talking with the snake with a trigger, how a trigger can be literally evaporated. I
Yeah,
mean, because it's so, and with when you're dealing with childhood trauma, it's so many of those little triggers and memories and things that are stored that just are never processed. So it's almost like you're bringing them up, you're balancing them, and you're making them kind of a neutral emotion, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. And we all have our own trauma and our own, I always say there's always some dysfunction in every family. And sometimes you realize that that exists, and sometimes you don't realize that it exists, right?
Right,
You know, but when you do, at least you know that you can work with it and that there are options out there
right.
for you.
So if somebody wanted to, well, look into somebody like you, they would look for a registered acupuncturist or nutritionist or holistic. What is the combination, or is it just you do a broad range of things?
Well, if someone was looking for something specific related to energetic work for allergies, you'd probably want to look for someone who is some form of bioresonance or bioenergetic practitioner in some way, shape, or form. Um, muscle testing has to be part of that, or like you said, you have your essential oil. You have a device that allows you to test different things. So you have to look for someone along that lines. A traditional acupuncturist wouldn't necessarily be able to target specific things. It depends on what it is. Um, yeah, so that's the way you need to try and hunt around, right? You need to find someone who works in that realm and at least knows the muscle testing because there's so many options there for them.
And how do you, I'm just curious because, or they could just come find you, which would be easier because you're on here now. So, so be just easier to go talk to Christine. But how do you do things just curiously, like how different is it remotely? Is it you can do pretty much everything, the allergy testing remotely, or
Yeah, you can do it all remotely. Um, usually I do it on Zoom with people,
okay,
and I just basically use the points. I work as if I am them, if that makes any sense at all.
that works. Okay, expound on that.
Okay. So everyone has different techniques. So when I'm using different acupuncture points, I'm actually working on the acupuncture points on me
Okay,
on behalf of them.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like with Reiki or anything else, you like you said, once you get that connection and you're versed in how to do that, and the person is it like kind of Reiki where the person on the other side has to be willing to accept the energy and that kind of thing?
Yes, they have to be okay with having the work done. They have to consent. Yes.
Yes. Which makes sense, or else we could just be going around poking on people when they never don't even know it's happening. So,
Exactly.
but if you
Not
yeah, if
good.
you I mean, it's again for the people out there listening, a lot of people, it's new information for people. It's fascinating information. I've seen it now in several different small instances with my own eyes. So I'm a true believer, but I call it an ignorant believer because I really don't know that much about it, but it's fascinating and it works. And, for the people out there that are just, I mean, allergies are a big thing the older we get. I never had allergies in my life. And now all of a sudden it's like 45 years old, all of a sudden it's shellfish and then it's crab legs and then it's shrimp and it's all this stuff. And then it's cinnamon. Like, where did that come from? Like all these different things. And it seems to be getting worse. But I think it's because maybe the toxins in our bodies just need a I think I just need a total detox. Like I
And
need
that's
to
part
drink.
of it. That's part of
Yeah.
it, right? We're too overloaded now. We're being exposed to so many different things that the body, it just can't keep up with everything anymore, right? We're filling that cup and we're filling that cup and that cup gets too full and then everything spills over.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. I feel like that your our bodies have so many toxins that your body is overworked just trying to get back to the normal homeostasis and we never get there. So in that our bodies are just I just think they're just so overtaxed right now. So um yeah, this is absolutely fascinating. Again, I try to encourage people that are listening to open their minds to new things because I would have thought the gentleman that did that to my daughter, who was like, "Oh, she's had mono probably 20 years." I'm like, "How are you telling that with a little bottle?" He's like, "Trust me, we'll do
Right?
a test. Don't worry. Like we'll do a blood test if that makes you happier, but I'm just going to tell you what it's going to say." He was very confident and sure enough, like everything he said when they actually looked at her blood, he's like, "Yep, there's that. There's inflammation. I mean, he literally called everything without taking blood. And it was
Amazing.
absolutely fascinating and amazing. And I love it. And then, like I said, I talked to you and I'm like, oh yeah, allergies. And immediately I was like, there's so many people right now suffering from allergies that they don't understand because it's new.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so, so if people want to work with you, talk to you, visit you, what's the best place they can find you?
Well, I do have a website called noallergiesplease.com,
Love it.
so they can reach me there. Um, but for anyone who's interested in learning how to muscle test, I actually put together a quick little guide so that people can learn how to test themselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So if anyone wants that, what I did is they can just go to christinelauer.ca and they can access the guide.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes because I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and they can have fun with that and they can learn how it works and play around with it.
Okay. And then yes, and then when they see how it works, then they can come to you and get more stuff done because you have the machines that can fix some of the stuff. Now it's like it's kind of like saying, it's like muscle testing. You go, okay, now I'm acutely aware I got these issues. Now what do I do?
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But it's fun. Like the testing is fun. Once you get the hang of it, it's like, oh, let me check this. Let me check this.
oh yeah, that is cool. I'm gonna have to try that with my daughter because she was the first one that got in our family, and again, I think we talked about this when she was going through her treatment. She had like little vials of things that she couldn't have near electricity or couldn't have near her phone. We had to keep in the trunk of the car and all of this stuff. And I was like, why? And he's like, because if it gets around different frequencies, it negates it. It's not going to do the job that it was meant to do. So it was almost like a liquid form of what you do with your laser,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. And we've got like the Wi-Fi and the EMFs and all that stuff. That affects our signals and our energy and our frequencies. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting all discombobulated.
Yep. Yeah, I laughed the other day. I was doing this. My son is like, "Oh, you're not sleeping well." And he said, "Here, try this sleep app." And I was like, "Okay." So which sits next to my head and records my snoring and my farting and my breathing and my talking in my sleep and my dog snoring and tries to distinguish it all. And then it literally recommended to me that I don't sleep with any electronics close to me by my bed. And I'm like, "Well, then I can't use your app."
Yes,
But
exactly.
I was like, well, that kind of defeated the purpose, but it was literally, I mean, makes sense. I mean, this thing is sending these signals into my body to do whatever. So yeah, sleeping next to all this stuff with headphones going and all this, it's just not, I feel like it's all jumbling in our bodies.
It is. Like I have a battery operated clock and I try not to have the my bed right near an electrical outlet. Some people will turn their routers off at night or a
Yeah.
Faraday cage, different things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I'm the worst. I sleep with my phone next to my bed. I sleep with headphones in, singing me music. And I mean, it's horrible when you really think about it. And then I'm gonna wonder like 3 years from now when my brain's like fried and I'll come to
We're
you
already
and you can
fried.
unfry me.
Yeah, we're already messed up. That just adds to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been super fun. I'm excited. I'm actually excited to get your muscle testing thing. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. But now people are listening to you. They're intrigued. They're curious. They're ready to learn more, most likely. If you could send the people out into the world with something practical they could do or something to be aware of, or maybe some words of wisdom, what would it be?
I think the important thing for people right now is to start learning to pay attention to their bodies and what it's telling them because it can be very subtle. There's always a phrase that says, your arthritis at 70 actually started when you're 40, or that issue that you have right now with high blood pressure maybe started when you were 20. So there's little signs and little symptoms that your body will have that we've tuned out. We've stopped listening to the little things, something as simple as, oh, I ate this. Why am I feeling off? And trying to trace back, it's and being mindful of what you are exposing yourself to, like make different choices to create less overwhelm for your body. It could be a cleaning product or things that you're putting on your skin, anything to lessen the load so that your body can function the way it was meant to.
Good
That's my
advice.
that's my big one is creating the awareness out there that just simplify things a little bit and get back to the way things are meant to be.
Yep.
If that makes
Yeah,
any
no, it
sense
makes
to you.
total sense and do it naturally. I mean, I'm the absolute worst that knows I have all these allergies. So I'm like, okay, no big deal. I'll just take a Benadryl before I go out to eat. So the reaction won't be quite so bad. Well, my body is still going into shock. Now it's just masked with Benadryl. So it's not like I'm not really suffering the consequences, but you're right. You don't think about it. People don't go, I had one beer last night and I vomited in my mouth. I mean, I heard a lady say that to me the other day, and I was like,
Yeah,
maybe your body is rejecting that. Maybe there's a poison
exactly.
in there your body doesn't like because one beer should not make you sick to your stomach.
It shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And I had a teacher once tell me really quick. He said, we're supposed to sweat for the toxins to come out, right? And when you put on that antiperspirant, you're blocking that sweat. So now the body has to go deeper in and find another exit route for whatever that toxin is.
Yep.
And you won't know 10 years down the road that, oh, wait a minute, it's this.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad used to always say that he didn't wear antiperspirants, and I'm like, why not? He said because your body needs to sweat. It's nasty stuff. It's like peeing out of your armpits. Like you got to get rid of it. You get rid of your urine, which is waste. Sweat is waste. Like getting. And I was like, very good point. He said, yeah, you put that big white coat of stuff on there, and then it's like, oh, let me go to my brain. Let me go to my kidneys. Let me go somewhere else. And it's funny. He wasn't a doctor, but he was a wise man. So that's funny that you said that.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And now I've got this whole visual of urine coming out of
And I'll leave you with that. You can thank me later. Ah, that was funny. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was super fun.
It was lovely talking to you. I'm so glad I met you. Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. And I will put all for everybody out there listening. I mean, it's just another tip, another trick, another thing to know that can make your lives just a little bit better. And that's what we focus on doing. So, again, awareness. So, we talk all the time about being aware of our emotions. Like, where do you feel it in your body? Be aware of more than just the emotions, be aware of the physical things that are happening in your body because, like she said, it might not bother you right now, but 20 years from now, when you've been doing it and not changing your patterns because you're not aware, it's going to make a difference. So, like, just tips and tricks to make you guys better. That's all we strive to do, guys. Have a blessed week. Talk to you soon. Bye.